Today's dedication is for Zahn, who gave me a very generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon. Marchesa, Dealer of Death, versus Roxanne, Kangee, and Nixilis. A 2-lander that does pretty much nothing. If we get into another colour that we need, then Notion Thief might be able to do some work, but I don't think we can rely on that. We will go for a free mulligan. Alright, and into a 2-lander with a Jeska's Will. Might be able to get us into some relevant cards. Not really liking this either. We're just pretty much reliant on Jeska's Will, so let's try and keep a 7-card hand for once in a game of Commander on Magic Online. Faithless Looting on turn 1 with that weird art. And a white bordered mountain, so I think this player is just actively trying to offend me. Discarding a Dangerous Wager and a Bootlegger's Stash. There is a Feed the Swarm, so we've got some more means of committing crimes. Unfortunately, our opponent didn't discard any creatures here, or we would have been able to go for a turn 1 reanimate. That might have been funny. Sensei's Divining Top into play after a tap land, and I've just realised that Haunted Ridge will be a tap land as well, so should have got that down on turn 1. Draw into a Surveil land anyway, so speaking of tap lands, we'll get that in and try to fix our next draw. And that is a Necromancy I don't think we need, so put that in the graveyard, fish for something better. So the loose plan at the moment is to get into our commander and then point Jeska's Will at someone. Maybe we'll have 4 mana by then, and that way we'll be able to put mana into Marchesa's ability and be able to loot. A Mana Crypt on turn 2 by Nixilis, followed by a Liquimetal Torque, and a Talisman of Indulgence, 4 cards in hand. And down to 3 with an Ozolith, Lightning Greaves from the bird deck, a Slowbad Iron Goblin from the Gruul player here. We can sacrifice an artifact, add an amount of red equal to the mana value, but it can only go on artifact stuff. Okay, there is a Talisman of Creativity, which I may regret not getting down, but if we go for the Haunted Ridge, we can have 2 mana held up next turn, so after the Talisman it can be a Feed the Swarm or a Virtue of Persistence, Lockthwain Scorn, -3/-3. I think we get down the commander. And then if this gets countered or destroyed or something, we can always go for the reanimate on it anyway. So Comrade the Grim into play for Nixilis, so seeing that on turn 3 is unusual. And then it's a Favourable Winds by the Azorius player, haven't seen a land yet though. Sensei's Top being spun during the upkeep for Roxanne. And that is an Ancient Grudge, so we'll be able to use Flashback on that, we'll have to be careful. But going after the Mana Crypt at the moment, and then flashing it back straight away for the Ozolith. So being very aggressive with that thing. And if we blow up the Sir Conrad the Grim, I dare say we might be able to get a scoop out of the Nixilis player. And now the 3/3 turns in at the bird deck. Alright, a Hex Parasite is a decent means of committing crimes, so we could do that here. Let's go for Hex Parasite first. I want to be able to pay into Marchesa's ability with Jeska's Charm, so we'll leave that another turn. And then we'll remove counters from anything. We're targeting a land, and all we've done is pay 2 Phyrexian life here, so nothing into X. And that triggers the Marchesa. Alright, so now it's a Terminate onto our commander. Yeah, so do we have to reanimate the commander here? We can't reanimate after going for the Talisman is the problem, so Marchesa can go back into the command zone, unfortunately. We'll trigger Sir Conrad the Grim for a point of damage. Just really want to get into a land here. Alright, 2 lands on top, so we will put the Wooded Foothills... Oh, which one do we select actually? Oh, I wanted the blue one, but it doesn't matter. We select the one to put into our hand, not the one to put in the bin. Alright, so we managed to make a land, which means we can go for the Talisman, which is what we wanted to do this turn. Yeah, I wanted to save the Reanimate for something that we could steal from our opponents maybe, or say something like Chrome does go down, we'll be able to grab it back with the Reanimate. I think taking a turn off to get Marchesa down again should be alright. Maybe if she gets blown up again we could reanimate it. Anyway, shocking down a Blood Crypt, and there is a Pestilence. So that is 1 damage to each creature, gonna take away our Hex Parasite, and looks like that's what he's doing straight away. So maybe reanimate onto this will be the thing. Don't have any kind of infinite combos or anything that I know of, it's just really to trigger the commander. But this guy has really emptied his hand. He's gone aggressive this game. And now the Sir Conrad going in at the Roxanne. Yeah, he's emptied his hand really quickly. He's just very, very eager to just use everything that's in his hand just because. He didn't have anything to do with that Ozolith and just threw it into play, straight into removal for whatever reason. I think Pestilence is going to be a real pain, so maybe feed the Swarm onto that, because he can just peck away at our Marchesa once we get that back into play. Anyway, still missing lands over here, so it might be a 3-player game soon enough. Alright, this is a pretty spiky game. A Decimate going on to one of our lands, and then Sir Conrad the Grim, a Rock, and the Pestilence. It's going to deal 1 damage to everything on the way out. Yeah, I was actually thinking of going for the Treachery off the back of Jeska's Will there, so that we could untap all the lands and get multiple colours back, but yeah, nothing that we really want to take control of now, and nowhere near as many lands to untap. Then spinning with Sensei's Top, so this player down to 2 cards as well. See how this plays out for him. And we get the 3-3, we're already down to 30. Alright, so maybe it is Jeska's Will then, now that we've lost that land. There is a snap for us, which is just an easy means of gaining more mana so that we can put it into Marchesa. I think it's Jeska's Will though, so that we can get down Chrome, so we'll have to make sure to hold up a blue mana. Although we don't get both effects now, do we? But yeah, I think it's still just worth getting down the Chrome, so we will add red mana, only get 1 effect like I said, point that at the blue player. We just have to try and draw into more lands if they're going to keep getting blown up and mana's going to get messed with. That went through pretty quickly, so we'll assume that the Azorius player doesn't have counter magic in hand. And we've got 3 red mana going to waste, unfortunately. So I'm going to go in at the Gruul player, who's got more chance of drawing into effective things, assuming he doesn't have any in hand already, because Sensei's Divining Top can fix his draws. Not as likely to get double spells from the Rakdos player. Could go for his commander and then in for a small spell though, but it's not likely, and especially not when you top deck into a tap land. So it looks as though he's just going for the Nixilis now. Double spells not likely from Kangee either, unfortunately, who is sticking it out with just 2 lands. Has something this time during his upkeep though. It's basic land cycling on the migratory route, so he's finally able to make a land, maybe go for a removal spell with that. Doesn't play it now even if he does have it. Seeing a Kessig Wolf run over here, and the Gruul player is starting to get away from us mana wise. More removal. That is a Jaya's Immolating Inferno, getting rid of the legends. And the 3-3 back in at us. So at the very least we're going for Virtue of Persistence, I think. And probably reanimate onto that Chrome. Alright, there is the land we wanted, so yeah, it would be nice to take a turn off and get our commander down, but it's one of those games where I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So go for the Scorn onto the 3-3. So we lose 2 life to that, and then we're going to have to lose another 5 life to the Chrome being reanimated, because that's our only means of refilling our hand at this point. And then we can hold up a snap at least, because that is an instant. Myriad Landscape being cracked during the upkeep. Strangely, I don't think he knows what's on top of his library. I don't think he does, maybe he does, and wanted the shuffle. Just went for more black mana, which might be telling. Empyrean Eagle, that is an Anthem effect for flyers. Admirable that Kangee is sticking this out. And the 3-4 with Shroud and Haste deciding to hold back, which I think is the correct thing to do here. So Roxanne into play. I think we might have to grab control of that with the Treachery. And it will shock something, so see if that shock from the Meteorite comes in towards us. It goes over to Nixilis, who does have 1 card in hand. And then spinning the top. So we're not going to use the snap if we want to take control of Roxanne. If we can keep control of her for a turn cycle and manage to attack in with her, then we'll be able to fix a little bit of mana. Alright, there's an Ottawara, which we're going to have to play as a land, I think. We'll be able to untap all of our lands, thanks to the Treachery, so tap down 6 mana, untap 5, means we can still get down our commander. So Treachery onto Roxanne, just make sure it doesn't have ward. No, I didn't think it did. Alright, so managing to take control of that, untap all of the lands, because Treachery does that for some reason. And we're just 1 shy of the Virtue of Persistence, unfortunately, so get down our commander and wait for Nixilis to blow it up. And then we'll continue to go in at the Gruul player, piling as much damage there as possible, because if any player's going to get away from us, it'll be this one. And then we just have to hope that we at least keep hold of Marchesa so that we can commit a crime or two in order to keep some cards in our hand, because no one's playing into the Chrome at the moment. In fact, there's a few players that actually aren't able to. It's a Mind Stone from Nixilis, and we'll be able to play his commander here if he wants to, so that'll be a decent snap target for us. And there is the second spell, so we draw a card with Chrome. Alright, and a Fierce Guardianship isn't the worst thing to have, so that should help us keep our commander in play, hopefully. Some people have given me grief in certain videos about running Fierce Guardianship, but you see with games like this on Magic Online, why I run cards like that. Sometimes it's the only way to actually stay in the game. Just the one spell from the bird player. Whenever one or more creatures attack you, you gain 1 life for each attacking creature, that's fine. The Gruul player not spinning Sensei's top during the upkeep, so he knew what he was drawing into, dropped a land straight away, shuffles with the Arid Mesa, so plus counter goes on Nixilis, and we each lose 1 life. Exiles a Vandal Blast, which, yeah, there's some alright artifacts in play. If he's got nothing else to do on the next few turns, then maybe he'll overload that. This is why we want to be consistently making lands as best we can, which isn't the easiest feat in Grixis. Unexpected Windfall, going to make some treasure, which will tap for double mana when you've got your Roxanne in play, but unfortunately not on his side of the field. And discarding to that a Pierre's Revolution, then spinning top after the fact. So I'm hoping we get a turn with the Roxanne, deciding to draw with Sensei's top now. I'm hoping that this player doesn't give up too quickly, because my plan is to swing in with a couple of 4-power creatures, get the Meteorite with Roxanne, might even point the 2 damage over there as well. Alright, a Chaos Warp goes on to his own Roxanne, so we do draw a card here and hopefully get into a decent permanent as well. Notion Thief is another means of drawing cards, but again, relies on our opponents. And not revealing any permanent is unlucky. Oh, the way Chaos Warp is worded, it's the owner of the permanent reveals the top card, so let's see what was revealed here. A Hull Breach, so is that still on top? Yeah, doesn't say anything about putting it on the bottom, so we know a Hull Breach is on the way. Okay, getting into the protection now. There's an Arcane Denial, which will count as a crime. Snap onto the Nixilis before anything else, I think. Make sure to tap lands for it so that we can untap those. And we'll tap a land for Marchesa as well, so that we've got more of a choice as to what to untap with Snap. Alright, there is a Noxious Gearhulk and a Black Market Connections. Do we play Black Market Connections this turn? Make sure to click the right card this time. Black Market Connections into hand. And the Noxious Gearhulk can go in the bin, ready to be reanimated at some point maybe. Then we'll untap blue and Rakdos. And I think we are just going to need as much mana available to us as possible, so we'll go for the connections and try to start making treasure, because this becomes more and more relevant as the game goes on. So we'll swing both in to the right, continue to concentrate on that player. Hopefully the Meteorites won't be of any relevance to us, and the creatures that we've got in play here both have 4 power, or 4 toughness even. And it might be that he just taps down his lands to get the commander out, in the hope that, yeah, and I thought that might warrant a concession from our opponent. I was going to say he might hold up his Mana Rocks as double mana from the Roxanne, assuming that he plays that again next turn, but decides to leave it there. Alright, there is a Fate Unraveler. Whenever an opponent draws a card, there's 1 damage to that player. Yeah, we're wanting to draw quite a few cards with something like a Notion Thief. I don't really like that. I wouldn't bother with the Arcane Denial here if it wasn't for the fact that we've got the Fierce Guardianship, but we do, so we'll go for a Wasted Crime, unfortunately. But we get to cantrip with this as well and dig 1 card deeper into the deck, try and make these land drops that we're so eager for. At least we know that that Hull Breach isn't going on to the Talisman anymore. But our opponent does have the Vandal Blast and decides to blow the Talisman up, sheerly out of spite, I imagine. So we've got a land we've just drawn into. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we could go for the Virtue next turn. Although we could do that anyway with Black Market. So I think we allow the Vandal Blast here in an attempt to keep our creatures in play. An opponent might wipe the board. And then, yeah, we either reanimate Noxious Gearhulk or the Hex Parasite at this point. We might be able to start putting mana into that and load up our graveyard with some decent things to bring back with the enchantment. Anyway, it's 2 cards for the Rakdos player and a card for us. And it's turn 9, the Azorius player still struggling on 3 lands over here. And there's another rock to replace the one that just got blown up. Aerial Assault. Destroy a target tap creature, and then 1 life for each creature you control with flying. Yeah, I think I'm going to Fierce Guardianship that and challenge the Rakdos player to get rid of our stuff. It's just going to be easier to have this in play for longer to try and draw more cards, especially when we just gave more cards over here. So we'll use another counterspell, waste another crime. This might encourage the Rakdos player to point removal at us now. And if this bird starts to swing in at us, then I might hold back the Chrome as a blocker. And instead goes at the Rakdos player, so yeah, maybe we can turn these 2 in over there as well. Start bullying this guy. Alright, so going to make more mana and draw more with the black market connections here. Breach the Multiverse is an interesting one. I wonder if that's worth doing instead. Let's go for a treasure, draw a card, just 3 life into the connections this time. Alright, gets us into a Bloodstained Mire. Yeah, and seeing as how we're going pretty slow here, I think it's fine to just get down the Takanumar, and then we'll go for Virtue of Persistence here. Give our opponents a chance to play something into the Noxious Gearhulk, and then next turn we'll be able to go for land, Arcane Signet, and then the Breach the Multiverse. So let's both attack in at Rakdos as well. And he's got 5 cards in hand, one of which is his commander. He does have a Lightning Greaves as well, so it will be more difficult to remove his commander. Although discarding Archon of Cruelty would be good. We can't commit a crime at instant speed anymore though, unfortunately. Anyway, as you would expect, the Nixilis coming in towards us with haste. So maybe it's time to start looking at other players' graveyards for some decent creatures. Thermo Alchemist being played first. And throwing the Lightning Greaves onto there is maybe to deal 1 damage to each opponent. So not deciding to leave up any blockers. Just wants to get the buff, and the exile card is a mountain, which he is able to play. Alright, so the only creatures we've got here are Fate Unraveler. And we've still got the Sir Conrad available to us, which could deal a nice chunk of damage to our opponents. Triggers on creatures leaving our graveyard, so that could be relevant with the whole reanimation thing. Not whether that getting this down was relevant. If we're willing to lose life to it, we could trigger a crime with this and go feed the swarm. Alright, that player deciding to scoop, that's a shame. So Virtue of Persistence will go after, see who can outrace whom here. Go after the Sir Conrad the Grim. Yeah, we pay into that. Okay, there's an Urborg, a Gitaxian Probe. I think we'll just put the Urborg in hand is fine. Gitaxian Probe is obviously a good means of committing a crime, but got to be careful with life here, so yeah, we'll keep the Urborg. And manage to grab the Sir Conrad. And there's a Mayhem Devil. So I think it's just going to be a treasure with the black market connections, because we've got a decent amount of cards in hand here, and we do have to take life to the black market connections, which is why it's a risky card to play. Although that does trigger up Nixilis, which I didn't think about, so lost exactly 1 life and give our opponent another card. This time it is Firebrand Archer, and they do have haste available. So play Urborg, and maybe it's just Breach the Multiverse, because we don't have the mana to play Archon of Cruelty at the moment, unfortunately. So yeah, let's go for this. This is where it's relevant that the other 2 players scooped on us, but I say that every single game now. So only going to get 2 creatures here. And that triggers Sir Conrad the Grim. See 6 creatures there. Let's see, we've got Gissa. Don't have the mana held up for Snapcaster to be relevant. Spellskite can protect our commander if we like. And we know about the other cards. Now there's Fate Unraveler, we've seen. Brimstone Trebuchet. A Stuffy Doll. The commander has flying, unfortunately. Cataract Parasite, so they've got some draw pain stuff in here. I think we'll have to try and go wide with the Gissa by making crimes, although that's really slow. Yeah, if he's got multiple means of untapping this, let's just go for the Noxious Gearhulk after all. And then we'll go for the Fate Unraveler over here, simply because it's a half-decent blocker. So I can't get rid of the commander thanks to that surprise Lightning Greaves, like I said, but we can get rid of this thing before it pecks us too much. So Noxious Gearhulk only has 1 target, and that is committing a crime, but again we don't have the mana held up, because in typical Grixis fashion we have struggled on mana this game. Really want to get Marchesa down and then keeper down and not be interacted with really, but that's a tall order in a game of Commander. So Comrade going to be as relevant as we thought it was going to be though. And we do gain a bit of life from that. 3 life was it? Yeah, 3 life from the toughness on this. So again go through to attacks. Yeah, if we're just trying to outrace our opponent, we'll make him think twice about swinging in towards us. I don't think he's going to get 18 damage on us. And if he does, then so be it. So our opponent's down to 7. We'll have 3 cards in hand and has the Archer available, don't forget. Draws a card and loses a life. I'm going to assume that most of his card advantage is based on the Commander and impulse draws. So he'll be playing from exile for the most part. Unless he wants to draw a card with this Mind Stone. Goes for Firebrand Archer. May want to think about leaving that back as a blocker. Second card draws us into something with Chrome, and it's a Flame Caller, so we know the type of deck that he's going after here. Just after pinging a lot. There's a Gilded Drake, which is another relevant creature for us. And then following that up with an Outpost Siege, so yeah, I don't think our opponent's going to be able to do anything about us next turn. We've got too much interaction in hand here. Manages to make a land, so 1 card in hand could have a removal spell. Theatre of Horrors was exiled with the Nixilis and does decide to swing into us, that's fine. Even fewer blockers for him. I mean, maybe he's done the maths already. This has Menace, so it's likely that's getting through anyway, knocking him down to 1. And then he draws a card next turn to the Fate Unraveler, so I think we've got him regardless of attacks here. So with the Virtue of Persistence, we'll just go for the Gisser for the fun of it. And our opponent decides to scoop it up there, so we were drawing into a Niv-Mizzet Perun. Yeah, Orcish Bowmasters, Dockside Extortionist, we were getting into the really good stuff there. Our opponent had Anger of the Gods, which is where our extra toughness on all of our stuff was really relevant. In fact, all of our stuff has 4 toughness, compared to the 3 damage that the Anger of the Gods wants to deal. So yeah, drew into some of the beefier stuff there, and unfortunately wasn't able to trigger the crime committing from Marchesa as much as we would have liked. So if that stuff was on top of the library, obviously we could have milled it into the bin from there. But once it's in our hand, we're pretty much stuck with it unless we can ramp into it or get into some kind of rummage effect, which obviously we didn't here. So yeah, a little bit of a downside of the deck, but I think we did very well considering all the heavy interaction and the really, really aggressive plays that our opponents made in the early game. Bit too aggressive in my opinion, it ended up biting them. Anyway, hopefully you all enjoyed the gameplay from Marchesa anyway. If you want to see more from it, as ever, you must let me know in the comments section, leave thumbs up and all that stuff. Deck list is in the description, along with a link through to Patreon. I do thank the patrons for their support of the channel, as ever. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.